Welcome to the Lemon Tube Amiga Workbench Guides. This video was made possible by our sponsors on Patreon. If you'd like to support these videos, why not check out our Lemon Tube Amiga Club subscription page, where you'll find all the latest perks and freebies. Now that we've checked out Workbench, it's time to go even further behind the scenes. Let's type cd / again to get back to our previous directory, and this time let's cd into the C directory. And in the C directory you'll find all of the commands that Workbench has to offer behind the scenes. So if we type dir in, we should get a directory of what's in that drawer. You can see very few commands are listed out. These are the only ones on the original Workbench 3.1 that we can actually use, and very few commands means that there are very few to go through in this guide. So the very first one, add buffers, will add a memory buffer to any drive that we've got connected to the Amiga, including DH0, which is our hard drive, and DF0 as well, which is our floppy drive. You can see I've added buffers to DF0, which is the floppy drive, and it's saying that that now has 220 buffers. If we add some buffers to the hard drive, it will say, well, it's now got 50 buffers. Well, the hard drive buffers are controlled with WinUAE, I think, so we don't really need to worry about those. So you can add buffers to speed up loading from floppy disk emulators or real floppy disks using the add buffers command, and that's definitely something that helps on a real Amiga, not too much on emulation. Add data types is the command that Amiga uses to add the data types, the pictures and images, into itself, the different codecs. The anti-click turns off the DHO clicking. If you can hear that on a real Amiga or on emulation, we can switch that off with the anti-click command. Avail lists our available memory, and you can see avail, we've got chip RAM and fast RAM and total RAM, some of which is in use, so the available is less than the maximum, and the largest continuous block means that we can fill that up continually. So if we type in avail chip, that will simply list out the available chip RAM, and avail question mark, that will give us a few tags. We can list that out by chip, fast, total, and we can even flush as well some of the memory if we're struggling for the memory. So that's how the avail comes in handy. The assign command will assign any drive to a path, so you can assign even the RAM to a path, or the hard disk to a path, or any disk to a path. So if you've got a disk in DF0 called my game, then you can assign my game to DH1, and it'll look at DH1 for my game or my drive. It will assign that drive to DH1. So that means that if it comes up, any requesters on the screen, please insert volume XYZ into drive ZF0, you can simply assign that drive to where it's installed on the hard drive, and it won't pop up with that requester. You can see we can type assign to list out all of the current assigns and everything that's mounted on our computer, and all those are assigned. So if I type libs, it will go to Workbench libs, for example. You can see at the bottom all of the devices as well that are connected to this computer, the serial, the parallel, and all those kinds of things. So you can see that we can access all of those things through the command line interface. As well as assigning, we can also dismount those things as well. So now if we type assign, my drive will no longer appear with the list because I've dismounted it. So if you want to type PRT, that's the parallel port, and par, I think that's again parnet, surnet, con is like a clipboard I think, and RAM is the RAM drive. So anyway, those are the quick shortcuts to go to any of your physical drives that you've connected, and some of those DH1s, DH4, or actually our PC drives that we can list on our Amiga. So if we do a directory of the RAM drive, that's got some temporary files in there which will be deleted when we switch off the computer, and sometimes installation packages uses the RAM drive and the T directory in there to create temporary files. So let's go back to the C commands. That's the assign, so we can assign paths with that. Bind drivers, I'm not quite sure what that does, but that has something to do with binding the monitor drivers, I think, so that you can have different monitor drivers running if you've got a special monitor. And the break command will break any active command that's running at the moment in Amiga DOS. So if you open up a second Amiga DOS window and type break followed by the number of the command that's activated, then that will break the command in the other window, and that's how you can rescue lockups with the break command. So it will give you a process number, and hopefully using the break command it will list out all of the processes that are currently running so that you can select which one it is. I'm not quite sure which the switch is to list out those processes, but that's how you break processes. And change task priority. Even though this is a multitasking system, you can still change task priorities. And conclip has something to do with the clipboard. The copy command, of course, copies one file into another file, and with the copy you can also rename as well. So you can copy X to a drive path and rename that as whatever you like. So for example, if I wanted to copy a path that I'm not even in, but I wanted to copy the C assign command to the RAM disk into the T directory, then it won't rename that, it will simply copy assign to the RAM disk in the T directory. So let's do dir RAM T, and there it is. So you can do a dir to any directory from anywhere, you can cd into any directory, and you can assign any directory, so you can make that a shortcut. CPU command gets rid of the internal CPU caches on the old 20 that we're using on the Amiga 1200, and if you turn those on it will be slightly quicker, and if you turn all those off it will be slightly slower. And if you can map ROM as well, that will make sure that the ROM and the reboot process is a lot quicker. At the moment we've got the instruction cache on, but that's all we've got on, because I think that's all the O20 has on it. If you go for the O30, it's got the instruction burst as well, and the data burst and the data cache, which you can switch on using that command. So the copy back instructions as well, so you can switch things on and off by putting no in front of it, and no fast ROM, no internal caches. You can switch them on and switch them off as well. You can test the MMU from here, that's the memory management unit, on all 30 and all 40 CPUs, and CPU fast ROM, again that will make sure that the reboot process is slightly quicker, and any ROM commands that we've got in the ROM will be accessed as well slightly quicker. So if you have the memory, that's definitely possible. The CPU command. The date command is one of those things where we can check out the date, I think, or assign a date or make a date on an application or a file. So let's check out the date on the sign. It's saying bad orgs, it's saying date. Alright, then this is actually to change the date on the internal clock. So according to this, the internal clock is set to Friday the 1st of October 2021. It's now currently 19 o'clock. So that's precisely when I probably recorded this. So I can set the date as well, and I can set date to any date that I like, a weekday, an actual date, and a time as well. And so I can set clock as well, and you can see the set clock command that sets the clock, the internal clock that the Amiga's running at, and you can put on the switches. You can load from a time or save to a time, and that comes in handy with batch commands, because you can save the time that something happened into a file, and then it says, well, at midnight it crashed, that's what happened. So you can set the clock command, and you can change the clock with the set clock command and set date command. So let's do another dir, so that's the date. What else have we got? Delete as well, and obviously delete deletes something. You don't have to type delete if you want to type delete. You can rename delete into del, and then you just type del and whatever it is, and it will execute the delete command. You can rename that to D if you want to do, and then it will act as the delete. Whatever you rename delete to, it will activate that function. dir, we've gone through already. Disk change is something on Amiga 1000. I believe it needs a disk change command if you're swapping disks, because it hasn't got an internal disk checker. I believe that might depend on the disk drive that's installed on the Amiga 1000 itself. And ed is definitely a command that we'll be coming back to. And edit is to edit text files. Eval, let's check out eval. Let's see what eval does. Well, that evaluates two numbers and combines those together. So if we do 10 times 100, it's going to come up with 1000, and that's basically a shortcut to the calculator application. We can evaluate things and put those in with decimal places, I believe, and you can do all kinds of fancy calculations with the eval command. And I haven't really looked into this, whether you can do logarithmic tables and all these fancy things that you can access through the libraries, but you can do, well, I think you can do even percents as well and things like that. It can't evaluate that particular formula, but again, if we use the up and down function on the arrow keys, we can go back to any of those and check it out. It's come out with the value 60, so 100 divided by 2 plus 10 is 60, so it can do things with the eval function. Execute will execute a script, which is basically a text file that has a list of commands in it. And file notes, you can add a comment onto any file, like we've seen the comment in the info pull down menu. You can add a comment onto any file to tell you what it is. And a file note, in this case, you can rename that to comment if you want to do that, and that file note command will be renamed to comment. And I've definitely renamed some of these commands on my machine, so they're a bit easier to memorize, but if you're definitely new to the scene, leave the commands as they are. So file note assign hello, so that should have put into the command called assign hello. So if we now list that assign, it will now put in hello as a comment underneath it. You can see the colon hello underneath it, and so I've now changed that again. Let's list it out again. Hello, this is the assign command. So that's what we're going to call it. We can put in any info we want to any command as long as it doesn't stretch out too long. And so that's a handy feature to have if you're using files and creating files on the Amiga. You can put in all kinds of file notes like info on that. So IconX runs things that you've used the execute command, so that puts up another shell window, and then you can execute things through IconX. So it's just a quick shell window. Info lists the info per drive, so info dho, or you can do info all, or whatever switch you want to do. That will list the physical info on all of the drives and everything that's been mounted as a virtual drive. Install, I'm not quite sure, but that should be something to do with the installer command. And info we've checked out, so iPref switches on the AGA modes on the Amiga 1200. Well, it switches on advanced Amiga screen modes, actually iPrefs, and it's the set patch that switches on the AGA modes. Join switches, joins text files together. List we've seen already. Load resource, I'm not quite sure. Load workbench loads in the workbench. That's the icon set that you can see. That's what they call Workbench, this system with icons in it. You don't have to load Workbench. You can drop into the CLI and locks a file. Magnetic tape does something about magnetic tapes. Make directory, of course. You can make a drawer, a file, a directory. Make link. Maybe that's something to do with linking computers together. Mount. You can mount something, a physical drive or a virtual drive from the mount command, and you can mount PC drives using the mount command if you've managed to run the device driver in the first place. Protect switches on and off the protection bits of every single file, so you can protect the file, you can make it so it doesn't write or you can't edit it. So if I protect assign srwd, that assigns it as a script, so I don't have to execute anymore. If that assign command was a list of commands in a text file, then I could then execute that without having to type execute, and that will assign that as a script. So let's take that off, because it's not a script, it's a command. So we want to execute that, and we can edit and delete it. So that's the protection bits using the protect command. And of course relabels the physical disks that we've got installed. So if we label dho, well, it's asking us to put in a parameter, so if we label that my files, so that means that drive dho will now be called my files. It's basically a rename command, but only for drives. I don't really know why you need relabel when you've got rename, but let's rename it back to files anyway, and eventually it will catch up, because this is a real time. It will prioritize the CLI, but eventually the operating system will multitask and do that for us. So that removes a RAD drive. If you've set up a disk drive in memory that's non-deletable, which survives resets, you can create a RAD drive, and that removes the RAD drive. Rename, of course, renames things. Request choice is like an ask command. So if you're in a CLI window and you want somebody to say, "Are you sure you want something? Yes or no? If yes, then do this, else do that. If not, abort." You can basically use the request choice command to do that. And so it will come up with a gadget window, and I'm not quite sure how this works, because I've got an ask command that does exactly like this, but only better. But I'm not quite sure. Aha, request choice. So if you tapped it in, yes or no, choice, yes or no. Well, I'll give you well, you can't select anything at the moment, but there is definitely a switch. And then that means that you can ask the user, do you want to boot into the extended Workbench upon boot? And the user will say yes or no, and that means that you've got a choice. If you want to have who wants to be a millionaire type questions, then you can type those in as multiple choice and have those in if else. And those statements from, you might remember from Programming Basic, you can have those in Amiga DOS. I think it's in the ROM in 3.1, but you can have if else and end if commands. So you can program this up so you can ask the user questions and create a quiz if you want to do. And if it says this, do that, and if it says that, then do something else. So that's how you program request choices in. Using that, there are other better, more important things than request choice, but it is there as a command in Amiga 3.1 DOS. So hopefully that's the end of that. Let's type hopefully dir in again and get on to the next one, because there is only a few more commands left to go through. So request file, and again, no idea what that does. Maybe that requests file over a network, no idea. Let's see if it gives us any information. We can ask all kinds of things from request file. Wow, so that's some kind of thing. Request file, let's just request the copy command, and it says it's copy. Oh well, it doesn't really give us much information on that, but we've requested that file. And maybe that again, you can request this file from the user with the request choice command, and that will do something with that file. So now let's use the search command for to search for something. I'm trying to search dho, which is maybe the wrong choice because I think dho is blank at the moment. So it's searching dho for source at the moment and putting those in alphabetical order. There's only the disk info on dho, so I don't really know why I'm doing that, but you can search using the search anywhere for anything. It's basically a glorified find command. So if you want to find things, you can use search. Set clock and set date we've gone through. Set font, is to set the system font. Set keyboard is to set map. With the keyboard, it's on the English keyboard at the moment. Set patch, which is on AGA and other things as well. And you can see enabled graphics modes, AGA, and that also actually enables, I think, 32-bit fast RAM access as well, which speeds up our machine, because I think we can only access 16 bits before we switch on AGA. So that's essential to have. Set patch. What else are we going to do? Sort. That, I think, sorts to text files. So if you have a text file with lots of names and along with lots of dates, it will sort those into alphabetical order. You can then join those together with the join command. So sorts things out. Status. Well, process 2. Here we go. This is where you list out the processes. Status 2 is loaded as Workbench, status 3 is loaded as the command line interface. So when we close this Amiga shell down, process 3 will automatically shut down because this is what we're running. So if we type, well, we can type break 3 hopefully to shut the whole lot down. Not quite sure why it's not working, but that's got something to do with that. Types in a text file onto the screen, or maybe you can type physical things. Object not found. It's looking for a text file, a physical file on the disk, so you can type that out onto the screen. So type isn't working at the moment because I haven't got any text files. Well, I could type the startup sequence onto the screen if I want to do that, but I probably won't be doing that. Version lists out our Kickstarter version and our Workbench version as well. And we can, I think, program what we want that to look like using the version command. Wait simply waits around for how long you program that to wait for. And which, I think, which sort, it tells you which directory something's in. So if you want to type which and then, dpaint, it will list out the directory that that application is in. So it comes in handy. Not that many people use that. So that's basically all of the commands in the C directory, all the stock ones that you can install, and there are tons and tons and tons more that you can use. So I've just typed which assign. It's telling me it's in the RAM disk drive T, and it's called assign. So again, this is the end of my tour of the C directory, the standard ones, and we'll move on to something else next time.